Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the Talk at Elevation by Fan Day Nation. My name is Michaela Nagel, one of your co-hosts, and next to me I have Addison Perry, our other co-host of The Talk. We have a very special guest with us here today, Jill Barghelame, who has her own business and is the owner of Arete Warriors, which helps moms and kids reach their full potential, not only physically, but emotionally and mentally as well. We can't wait to hear more of her story first.
If you're a parent or athlete with dreams of competing at the next level, the right exposure can make all the difference. Fan Day Nation creates professional highlight reels, personal brand strategies, and social media content that gets recruiters' attention. We handle the production so you can focus on training, competing, and winning. Opportunities don't just show up, you've got to go get them. Start today at fandaynation.com. Thank you so much for joining us today, Jill. We're so happy to have you here.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Of course. So you went from being a college athlete and exercise psychologist to creating Arete Warriors, a program that goes beyond fitness, focus on mind, body, spirit. What inspired that shift, and how do you shape this into your mission of life?
Well, you're right. I was an athlete pretty much my whole life. I was a gymnast when I was really young, and then ended up being a thrower, which is, I bet there's probably 4 people in the world that can say they went from a gymnast to a thrower, because that's about the opposite.
I'm one of them, actually. Oh, there we go. There we go. I was a gymnast at like 4, but still, I was a gymnast and then a thrower.
Funny, I forgot about
that. Yeah, that's so cool.
So there's 2 other ones.
There we go. They're somewhere around. They're in Colorado. We got
That's so funny. Well, anyway, so I just found there to be so much learning in sports that you cannot teach in a book. And when when I went on to have a daughter, or I had a son and a daughter, but they both were gymnasts when they were young.
Oh, cool.
Because I just felt like that sport would teach them so much for whatever sport they decided to go into next. And I just feel like as a mother, you get to sit back and let the sports teach them what you can't and books can't, or whatever. So my I don't know why I got into I was actually exercise physiology. I should have done the psychology part, because that would probably have been more helpful to me in this. But I guess, though, did you ask how I ended up with this business?
Yeah. How did you start it?
So when the kids were young, Isaac was like 8, and we started listening to Way of the Warrior Kid books by Jocko Willink.
Awesome.
And he's just an awesome guy. He wrote Extreme Ownership, among other books. He was a Navy SEAL and leader of like Team SEAL 6 or SEAL Team 6 or some big,
cool,
badass, team out in real war scenarios, like real big problem areas. And he then, when he retired, he and his partner, Leaf Babbitt, I think is his name, they wrote a book and they started a business basically teaching corporations the leadership skills they learned over there. And so in the book, in the Extreme Ownership, he takes an example from war and describes the leadership principles that were used to execute such and such mission, and then brings an example of in corporate America, how that applies and whatever. It's just a fascinating book. So anyways, when he came out with a kid's book, I was like, oh. So we listened to it in the car, and Isaac was 8, Nadia was 4. And as soon as it was over, he said, can we listen to that again? I was like, yeah. So, we were just, anytime we would be driving, we'd be listening to it. Mm-hmm. And he was 9, I guess, maybe-ish, 8 or 9 when we finished. And he started waking up at 6 a.m. to work out before school. He would tell me every so often, Mom, first of all, he already was eating very clean. He didn't want sugar or naughty stuff. He just was real into health and whatever. And he would say, can we go a whole week with eating nothing processed? And I'd be like, no, that's too hard. I would find him out. I always remember this one time that we had an unattached garage, and he was sitting out in the sidewalk between the house and the garage in the snow. It was snowing, and he's sitting in his shorts and a t-shirt, cross-legged, with his hands on his, in some meditative pose. And I'm looking outside. I open up the door eventually, and I yell at him, it's cold. And he looks at me, I'm like, come in. And he looks at me, opens one eye. That's the whole point. I mean, this is before cold plunges. This is before anything. He was 8 years old. This is 8 years ago. This is before I knew anything about it. Cold exposure.
Right.
Like that.
Yeah.
So anyways, as is true in many ways, they have taught me more than I've taught them. But anyway, the point is, I learned that he listened to somebody else other than me. It's not like I wasn't telling him. He was so disciplined. He was so hardworking. He was so goal-oriented. And that just was exponentially increased by this stranger voice.
Yeah.
But somebody that he looked up to. In fact, in the book, it's Uncle Jake. And it was just fascinating that, and I have a friend who, he's from Sweden. He's funny. I was telling him one day, I was complaining to him and his wife that my husband was paying a nutritionist $65 an hour for what I could tell him for free.
Yeah.
And this guy goes, well, maybe if you wouldn't tell him so much other stuff for free, he'd listen.
Oh, no.
I was like, touche. So with my son, it's the same thing. You know, we as parents, we tell him blah, blah, blah all the time. And it's just, we sound like the teacher on the Peanuts, you know, just wah, 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 wah. So I just became interested in the fact that somebody else, some other good influences need to be happening with our kids, you know? And so we started this Arete Warrior program, and it was teaching them how to be uncomfortable, and that it's okay to be uncomfortable, and that you can do hard things. You know, we'd work them physically and show them that they could survive a 1-minute burpee test, and what are you saying to yourself while you're doing them? You know, just all the self-awareness, the positive self-talk, the struggle is good and good for you and all this stuff. But the problem is after COVID, you know, first of all, COVID kind of shut us down because we were an after-school program. And then by the time things started up again, I really wanted to be a mom after school, you know, instead of momming everybody else's kids.
You wanted your own.
I needed to be a mom of my own kids and running them every which way. So I kind of shifted my focus to moms because I was already working out with moms, et cetera. And I was like, these messages are things they need themselves. And why not teach them how to teach their own kids these things in part? So anyways, it's kind of evolved.
That's awesome. Bigger outreach now.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
You guys are about coaches. I'm coaching the coaches.
Coaching the coach.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And your son seems like he's following the same footsteps.
You know, he is a hoot. He is. I have always said, you know, I feel like I've worried in the past, like he's so driven. I was like, chill out,
Breathe.
like have a childhood. Like he's always got these entrepreneurial side jobs going on. He's got his own business. He details cars. He mows lawns, but he's also done some online, you know, drop shipping and all these other things he's trying to learn. And he's always watching like motivational. Like if he's on his phone, I'm like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
And every time he'll turn it to me, and it's either a car video because he's obsessed with cars. He wants to own his own car company someday, or it's a video on how to get in better shape for basketball, or you know, be a better basketball player, or it's some motivational dude teach him how to make $1 billion or whatever. And I'm like,
that's awesome.
Chill out. You need to have a child.
Let's play outside. Yeah.
Yes. and lately, I do feel, interestingly enough, that he has chilled out a bit.
Mm-hmm.
And then I found myself being like, would you go? Like, I'm like, God gives me what I've asked for, and now I'm wanting the opposite. You know, I'm never satisfied with the mother. But he's a cool character.
That's cool. He seems awesome.
Well, obviously you have 2 children as well. So let's hear a little bit about Nadia's story, because her story is just so interesting and inspiring. But also just going into that, how has just having this business and being a mom and playing those dual roles, what's been the most challenging aspect so far?
Oh, gosh. Well, to be honest, I think somebody said for years I was reading personal development books, listening to podcasts. You know, I was in a direct sales company for nutrition, and they were all about improving yourself, work on yourself harder than your business. And so I was reading and trying to make myself better, and continually disappointed in how not much better I was getting. I was continually falling short. And somewhere somebody stated that you have to teach it if you really want to learn it. So if you really want to learn something, you have to teach it to somebody else. And that is maybe another instigator of this program. I always am trying to tell people, don't think just because I'm out there giving moms advice that I'm the perfect mother. I read a weekly newsletter, and last week I was confessing all my sins for my shortcomings, and I'm not by any means the best mother, and they could both tell you that. I remember one particular story, and I'll get back to Nadia, but she's my difficult one. I mean, I hate to say that. She's the one that challenges me the most, you know? Because she's most like me, is why, in part. But I had a exceptionally horrible parenting moment one morning, and I said something terrible to her, and I turned around to see the look on her face because I was just so frustrated. And this girl that never seems to be bothered by anything I say, which is also frustrating because you sometimes want a response of some sort, you know? But she's just so her own person and doesn't really care what anybody else thinks, which is so wonderful and so challenging at her. But I turned around and looked at her, and just in time to see her slink off the chair and go get whatever. I don't even remember what the deal was, but she was going to get whatever I was either telling her to go get, or I don't know. I just remember getting off the chair with this horrible look on her face, and it broke me. I was just like, what have you done? And I just sunk my shoulders and dropped my head and turned around. And the next thing I know, my son, who had been sitting right next to her, is got his hand on my shoulder. I mean, he must have been, so she was probably like 3 and he was like 7, they're 4 years apart.
Right.
He had his hand on my shoulder. Or no, she couldn't have been 3. It must have been like 5 and 9 or something like that. Anyway, he puts his hand on my shoulder and I said, I am the worst mother ever. And he said, no, you're not.
No.
You just didn't handle that the best way.
So I was like, oh,
he was just so funny.
You just didn't handle that one.
You just didn't knock that one out of the park. But anyway, but my daughter is, first of all, she's kind of our miracle baby because we were kicked out of the fertility clinics and told we couldn't have her, and we ended up having her. And so that's one thing. But, and I was kind of with Isaac, I would, make him soothe himself to sleep, and I was going to do it all by the book. And with her, I knew she was our last, and we were going to be able to do this again. Mm-hmm. Turns out I'm not so fertile as the rest of my family is. And so I would rock her to sleep and, spoil her rotten. But anyway, she came out just pretty active, let's say. And when she was young, if I couldn't find her, which is happened embarrassingly a lot, we would look up. She'd be in a tree or up a fence, or she just would climb. She loves to climb and just be active and just so athletic. And that's why we put her in gymnastics, too, is to harness some of this energy and to hopefully teach her to focus.
Yeah.
Because the focus is another area that her and I are similar in, that we struggle in that department. But she is truly a pretty athletic and super smart kid. Mm-hmm. But she struggles with her executive functioning big time.
Okay. Got it.
She has, straight A's. She's got, I think her lowest grade right now is like a 96 in school. And yet I've been to the school twice this week because she forgot her project that she'd been working so hard on for weeks, and I felt bad. And, maybe not my best parenting move to bail her out by bringing it to her, like many would argue that I in fact, have written about the importance of letting
just to ask your son, he'll let you know.
I know. You know I did it wrong. Right? You will, but to let them suffer the consequences is often the best choice, especially for her grades. Mm-hmm. It matters more when they get into high school and beyond. Right. The consequences are bigger. So I fail every day is the moral of that story. But she is. They both teach me so much more than I've ever taught them. So
yeah, that's amazing.
Well, I bet it's pretty even.
Yeah, I don't know.
So you kind of explained how your company is like filtered into your family and everything. Can you tell us what it means, the specific word?
So arete is a Greek word meaning excellence in mind, body, and spirit, or to reach one's full potential. And it's pronounced like arete in a different language or whatever, and it can mean the peak of a mountain even. Or whatever. And so I just feel like I do have a master's in exercise physiology, and so most of my background was about the physical side, the body side. And being an athlete, I learned that it was definitely, there's some other pieces involved. The mental side is hugely important, and all of it. So I really enjoyed the idea of, trying to improve them in all the areas and improve myself in all the areas, quite frankly. So yeah, it was a bad choice because nobody can pronounce it right, but it made this perfect sense at the time that Arete would be the right choice for the business.
That's cool. It sounds cool. It's catchy once you get it.
Yeah. But getting it is probably, if you see it on paper, you're going to probably say it wrong, but that's amazing.
Super cool.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. So many fitness programs just focus on physical transformation, but you built, say it again?
Arete.
There we go.
The Arete
Warriors around developing strength in mind, body, and spirit, like you said. Can you break down how you integrate those 3 elements and why that balance is so crucial?
One of my defining moments was in college. Mm-hmm. I was at a track meet. I was a couple things. I was handed a discus in my junior year of high school. Okay. And basically, because I was getting so slow, the bigger I got, the slower I got. And I was a sprinter and a jumper. And they kept saying, okay, you're a little too slow for this relay. Now let's go throw this thing. And so they handed me a discus in my junior year, and I ended up getting a full ride scholarship to college with it. And then they handed me a javelin, and I ended up going to the Olympic trials and that. But after that, after the Olympic trials, or maybe it was before, I don't even remember what year. Well, I guess it was before. It was my sophomore year. I went to, what do you call it? Conference championships in Montana. I think it was Montana State. We drove 7 hours on this bus to get to this meet. And I was expected to potentially win the discus. And that would be 10 points for our team, 8 if I got second and 6 if I got third. I didn't even make finals. I threw the first one and it went out of bounds. I mean, the sector is very wide.
Yep.
And it went out one way, and I was like, what the heck?
You're like,
And so then I, got a little nervous, and I tried harder, and it went out again. And I only had one more shot to make it to finals, to get 3 more. And so I just did a standing throw, and it wasn't good enough to get me into the finals, and I didn't make it. So it was devastating to me at that time. And I cried my whole 7-hour ride home on that bus, looking out the window of the beautiful scenery, plotting my revenge, and it was, it's just, again, one of those lessons that, and I was saying to myself, I'm going to be so good that on my worst day, I can standing throw and get into the finals and fix whatever's going wrong or whatever. But just, that was such a defining moment in the importance of the mental side and the power of disappointment, the power of struggle, and it made me better. I think that was actually before I ended up going to Olympic trials in the javelin. So, so I'm all about welcoming discomfort and challenge to make you better in the long run. And so with that's probably where some of the mental side, came from. But I mean, I also just in training people, I was a good trainer, and bodies weren't changing. If I'm working with somebody 3 hours a week, so 3 1-hour sessions, they're paying a lot of money for that time. That's a lot of work. And I'm telling them to do X, Y, and Z on their off days, et cetera. But if they're not doing all the other hours, right, there's 24 hours in a day.
Exactly.
What are you doing the other 23 hours of every day of 7 days a week? And so my 1 hour of training just seemed so unimportant. It wasn't getting the job done. And so we ended up talking a lot about well, why can't you put the ho-hos down? Or, why do you hate yourself so bad? All these other things that seem to be, that seem to end up being more important than just the exercise piece.
Right.
Yeah. And yet, to make it full circle, the exercise piece makes you feel so much better. So Isaac decided when he was, 7, 6, I don't remember, he wanted to learn to look people in the eyes because he knew that was important. And so we said, okay, well, consequences, that's how we have to learn. So how do you want to do it? And I think it was his idea. Honestly, I don't remember, but
6-year-old's idea.
We decided, I don't remember if he's 6 or 7, but I said, when somebody comes in our front door, which we have a very active social life, there was always people coming in our door. I said, if somebody comes in our door and you don't look them in the eyes, or if we meet them at a restaurant, if you don't look them in the eyes, shake their hand, then how about you have to do 10 push-ups? And he's like, oh, that's great. That's great. I'll get stronger and all the things. So people would walk in. I remember one particular day, somebody walked in and he didn't remember. And so they kept walking, and I turned around and looked at him. I go, give me 10. And he was like, oh, and he'd lay down. And for a 7-year-old or a 6-year-old, 10 push-ups is a challenge.
Right. Yeah.
And he would, he was knocking them out straight and just struggling or whatever. And then we'd get up and go on about the person that came didn't even notice, it's not like it was, and we would do it in restaurants. We would do it, and we do it everywhere. And we would, and he, let me tell you, if you meet him today, he will look you in the eyes and shake your hand. It's just a habit. And it's not, that's the other great thing about what we talk a lot about in our Arete Warriors is you have so many decisions to make every day. How great would it be if we could just knock out 10 of them by just having them be habits? They're just who you are. And then you don't have to try to do those things. They're just who you are, and you just do them. But we ended up realizing, though, also burpees became a big thing in our house. It was our attitude adjustment.
Yes.
And for any of it, I tell anybody, if you're in a bad mood and you're struggling, go for a walk. You're going to feel better. The same thing happens with kids. If they weren't listening, or if they're fighting, or if they're whatever, it was 50 burpees. And people would get, experts would say, oh, do not use exercise as a punishment. And I understand their reasoning for saying that. However, with my kids, it made them stronger. They saw how it worked. They felt better when they were done.
Right.
Isaac has always been one of the stronger kids his age in the weight room. And he notices that, and it feels good. So he wants to do it more, So if anything, it made them more.
It's that competitive aspect.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
That's cool. Giving him
leg up.
Right? Something to win, a constant, daily, win
Yeah.
in life.
I don't ever, I mean, I get the point, I guess, of putting somebody in a corner. I mean, that used to be a thing. You'd put the kid in the corner. I mean, and the reason I say that is because anymore, it's almost impossible for a kid to spend any time alone
Oh,
doing nothing.
They can't do that.
Right.
No.
And so in that respect, maybe it would be a good thing for us to start doing is making kids sit in the corner again. Just stare at themselves in the mirror.
Yeah.
Or I don't know, just
do something.
just make them be still
Yeah.
and not have
Stay.
a stimulus or something happening. I don't know.
Yeah.
So
Interesting.
Absolutely.
So obviously these are some things you kind of talk about on your blog. Tell us a little more about that.
So it's designed. It was, when I first started. First of all, I love writing. It's one of my. It's almost like a therapy to me. These
I feel that.
these newsletters I send out. They're two moms, but they're kind of telling them, here's what I did wrong this week. Learn from my mistakes, or encouragement to them in all areas. We talk about exercise and nutrition and sleep and hormones. What's going on in our age range and the kids for that matter. And so it was designed. I was told in the beginning, you want to have a niche. You want to make it to a small group of people. And so I'd said moms, and I've had quite a few women reach out to me, seeing snippets I put up on Instagram or wherever.
Mm-hmm.
They say, I'm not a mom. Can I do it? Can I join? And I'm like, absolutely. Of course. Don't be offended when I call you a mom, but there's so much that applies just to women in general. But improving ourselves in all areas of life. Like, it is a fine line between loving yourself as you are, accepting your flaws, but also wanting to improve and wanting to be better, not only for your kids, but for yourself.
Yeah.
I just am a firm believer in that, and that's kind of a mixed message we're giving to our kids these days. We tell them, you don't have to do anything special. You don't have to be anything special. You don't have to, and that's true. It's important that a kid feels seen and loved for who they are, not what they do.
Yeah.
Right. Like it's, you don't need to perform to be loved.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, there's some certain things in our family that have to get done, and mom's not doing it all.
Right.
Dad's not doing it all. You're part of this family. There's
team.
Yeah. And you've got school and you want to be in these sports and both of you want to win at these sports. So you're going to have to work extra hard. And I don't know. I struggle with that one a little bit. But
what would you say to some of those moms that you're writing to on the newsletter that maybe feel insecure or kind of unsure about themselves in this process?
Oh, gosh. I think we all do it at some level.
Yes.
My biggest thing, to be honest with you, is honesty.
Yeah.
Like, I think there's nothing better for a kid to see that mom is not perfect. And she knows that.
Mm-hmm.
And she's modeling for you, daughter or son, when you're not feeling adequate or enough or perfect. Here's how mom handled it. She didn't beat herself up. She didn't go into some self-loathing state. She didn't cry about it or whine about it or blame somebody else for it. She just picked herself up. So I try to verbalize out loud a lot in front of my kids. Like just with Isaac, that example I gave, I said, I did not do that right. I am horrible. I feel terrible about how I just did that, and just let them, I think it's the best thing you can do for a kid is just to let them know, like,
you're human.
Mom,
Yeah.
we tend to want to have this front that makes them think we've got it all together. We are all the all-powerful, mighty Oz in the corner or whatever, that we've got all the answers and whatever. But I think it's comforting for them to see that we don't. I don't think a mom has to have it all together.
Right. It's your first time at life too.
Totally. That's exactly right. I tell people that all the time. Like, you have to take a test to drive a car. Yeah. You have to do all this stuff. You have to get pregnant to have a baby.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no qualifications.
No.
We've never learned how to do this. I tell them all the time, this is my first time being your mother. I don't know what I'm doing.
It's not like a book for it.
No. And every kid is different. Oh my gosh.
100%. You can have that angel and then you can have that wild, reckless kid that's just like bouncing on walls.
I sent a podcast to a friend on my way here. And it was like Mel Robbins and Gabor Mate talking about the prevalence of ADHD and autoimmune disease is in women in particular. It's like 80% of autoimmune diseases are in women. And in part, his point is it's because we are in this role of having to take care of everybody else before ourselves. Mm-hmm. And I really don't get on this whole bandwagon of, oh, poor me, I'm a woman. I don't like that at all. No. I mean, and I'm trying to teach mothers that you can take control of your situation.
Yeah.
You're not a victim here. You can set the boundaries, et cetera. Please do. But anyways, I was sending it to my friend who was diagnosed with ADHD as an adult. And some of what they're finding is some of it is a little bit environmental. Like because I, am spastic, my kids probably are going to be raised in a spastic environment. And maybe spastic's the wrong word, but you know what I'm saying? Like stressful environment.
Yeah.
If you're in a stressful environment, then different things are going to come forth.
Right.
And so it's not necessarily genetic, that's this ADHD stuff, but it's typical that you would have more than one person in your family have it.
Yeah.
Because of their environment or how you're. Anyway, I hope I'm making sense when I say that. But she has 2 sisters, and she was saying to me back, like, how does my other sister have an addiction? I have ADHD, and that third one, she got nothing. Or she's fine. And I was like, well, first of all, every kid has a different need at every different moment. And the parents are all at a different point in their journey at every given moment. So every single need a kid has at every given moment is not going to be met by the parents. I always tell people, it doesn't matter how much you love your children. They're going to need therapy when they grow up. It's okay. We're going to miss it. We're going to miss it all quite a few times. It's okay. And so certain needs were met and certain needs weren't at the inopportune times or whatever, and it, I don't know. I just feel like in general, a good mother will put a little pressure on herself and say, I want to get this right? They're going to try their best. But also a smart woman is going to know you're not going to be perfect all the time.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
It's okay.
That reminds me, have you ever seen the movie Blended with Adam Sandler and Drew Barrymore in it?
No.
She talks about how it's like you have to have that 1% for yourself. She always talks about, she's like, you can give that 99% to your kid, but you need that 1%.
Oh, I can see this. Who's in it again?
It's Drew Barrymore, Adam Sandler's in it, kind of like that whole.
Oh, I love that.
But it's really good because they talk about that too. And like, focusing on that self-love is super important. Because I mean, if you don't have that and that baseline, you're going to go crazy. And then how can you be a good mom?
Yeah. You don't have a little for yourself.
Every mother feels guilty for driving off the cliff, like for getting into the stage of rage, let's say, like just losing it.
Yeah.
And the trick is being so self-aware, learning to be so much more self-aware that you notice when you're on the path to that. Like we all notice when we fall off the cliff.
Yeah.
But I'm trying to teach to a little more self-awareness to notice when I'm headed that way. Right? Like, so when I'm burning the candle at both ends and I'm doing all the things and I'm starting to get frazzled and overwhelmed, that's a sure sign that mom needs to sit down.
Right. Take a breath.
Yeah.
Yeah. Go get your nails done or whatever.
Self-care
floats your boat. Yeah. Yeah. For sure.
Yeah. Can you talk a little bit about what you do in your program and in your business? Like what exercises or mental challenges you help these moms or adults or kids with?
So for the kids, I just recently sold the last journal. It was such a fun, it was a 10-week program. And we met once a week after schools, like depending on the after school, what are those called? Enrichments.
Okay.
Do they still do those? No.
I'm not sure. It's like,
yeah. So like, when kids get out of school, like elementary school kids get out at 3 and moms and dads.
After school care.
4:30 or 5. Yeah. So you could pick like, Nadia did a cooking class once and so they're kind of extended school.
That's
sort of speak.
Yeah.
I didn't know they called it. I don't know that.
It was before COVID. I don't know if they still do that sort of thing. So, because after COVID, when my kids went to a private school near us, I had I don't remember how many kids we had coming to the house. So I had a big old unfinished basement. So we had the girls coming twice a week, and the boys coming twice a week for a shorter time. But anyways, usually it was one time a week. And in that one session, first of all, they would learn the motto, they would learn what arete means. We would practice all these things.
Yeah.
And we would work out.
Yeah.
We would learn that being uncomfortable is okay. I remember like they would be doing like this 1-minute burpee test. We would see how many burpees they could do in 1 minute at the beginning, because then you want to see how much better you've gotten at the end, and they were encouraged in the journal to do these tests every so often, or a 12-minute test to get on the treadmill or on a track and see how far you can get 12 minutes. Just these uncomfortable, intense little sessions. And I'd be, and their partner's counting for them, and I'm timing and I'm walking through and I'm yelling because they're all cheering each other on, but I'm yelling into the kids too, like, what are you saying to yourself right now? Like, take note. What's going on in that head right now? Like, is it like, this sucks, or I suck, or whatever? Or is it, I can do hard things, or, whatever it is.
Right.
I choose just back up, the motto is, I choose my thoughts, I control my actions, I chase my full potential, is the motto. And so they would learn that. And then they would get these little rewards at the end of the So every week there was an activity they had to do at home. They were encouraged to work out every day. There was a spot in the journal to write what they, if they did a workout, what they did.
Okay.
There were workouts in the back they could do, like at the gym. At the playground or wherever. And every week there would be, or they could check off how many servings of vegetables they had. They were also
I need
encouraged.
this sheet of
I do
It
too.
was so simple. It was like a half sheet, and it was all colorful and fun, and not a lot of writing because the boys don't like to write. The girls are usually pretty cute about it. But
Yeah.
and some of them would be like, some of the little prompts would be like, what's a word that I wish people would use to describe me? And on another day it would be, what is a word that people probably use to describe me right now? And so they would start realizing like where they are versus where they want to be. So like week 10, or I'm making that up, it was maybe 8, by that time you were so in tune with, where I need to improve, et cetera. That would be the week that we'd introduce a habit tracker. And they'd be not required, but we'd be encouraged to write down one habit they were going to start establishing. And it was just a simple check every day. Yes, or I did or didn't do it. The first week, by the way, was interview an older adult. And that was during COVID, a big deal because they were having to do it online or on Facebook, and they weren't, or FaceTime. They weren't learning to look people in the eyes anymore. During COVID, we had masks and we weren't even getting out and whatever.
Stay away.
Yeah. So the interviewing an older adult, learning to listen to somebody that knows more than you do. That's not mom or dad, but ask questions be interested in somebody else other than yourself.
Right.
There was a couple of them that were bingos. And so they got to, all the boxes were like, took out the trash without being asked, did 50 burpees, did 10 pull-ups, or whatever. I'm making this up, it's all these different things, made my own lunch, cleared the table without being asked. Or
Parents probably love it.
They're like,
the one thing they all loved is I asked the kid every week, there was one thing that said, they had to fill out in the journal, it said, what's one new vegetable I tried this week? And the kids, for some reason, the parents love that because they all struggle to get their kids to eat certain things. And this was like a requirement that you had to try a different.
They're like, Mom, can you get some Brussels sprouts at the store?
Yeah. Somebody said once, like, my kid had vegetables for breakfast this morning because they also wanted to check it off on their thing.
Wow.
So the journey was super fun. I loved that part of it. And then the workout part, we did learn a lot about the physical body. One of the exercises, sometimes at the end, we would do like a kind of a quiet meditation. And we would spend time thinking, like, who do we want to be when we grow up, or who do we want to be right now?
Yeah.
And I remember one time doing that with the girls and saying, they're all laying there, it's quiet. And here's a side note is, after you work out and you put forth a ton of effort and you're just exhausted, there's endorphins flying, there's all sorts of stuff happening in your body that makes you very susceptible to what you tell yourself. So a lot of times when I'm working with my moms and whoever else too, after a hard workout, we will lay there for 3 or so minutes and just focus on our breathing, which has been scientifically proven to help you recover better from your workout. But also in that time, I would tell them to like inhale a word that you need more of and exhale the word that gets in the way of that or that you want to get rid of, or, just basically spend that time thinking about how you can make yourself better, blah, blah, blah. But with these girls this one day I'm walking through, it's all dark and quiet and they're laying there with their eyes closed and they've just had a great workout. And I'm saying to them, so what kind of girl, like, who are you? I just remember at one point I'm just walking through and talking. I said, do you eat the cake? Do you eat all of it, or do you just eat a piece of it? Do you feel guilty after you eat it, or did you just love every freaking bite you took? Like just like, are you going to be that girl that's like, oh, I can't have chocolate cake?
That can't be around people, or
right? Or but I think some of those conversations are taboo anymore, and I want kids to know you get to choose who you're going to be.
Right.
Both of my kids are, Isaac went to a new high school 2 years ago. He's a sophomore now. And Nadia, who's really not, she's as crazy as she looks on Instagram and everywhere else, she is an introvert. She does not, she loves playing with other kids and stuff. And she's been, this year in particular, the last 6 months to 9 months, she's gotten so good at looking people in the eye and shaking their hands. And we were up in Steamboat this week, this summer, and she was like starting conversations with people in the elevator, and my husband and I are looking at each other like, who is this kid? So it's, again, she's decided that she wants to be a more outgoing person. So she's becoming a more outgoing person. And we embraced her when she was not, and we're embracing that she's, deciding she wants to be more this way. But she did start a new school this year as a 7th grader, which is already a tough time.
We talked about that.
Oh my gosh, yes. And so, it was a lot, but she's been really doing a great job. But that was a hard adjustment for her to decide. And I said, before she went, I go, you get to decide who you're going to be. You're starting over with a lot of these people.
Right, new life.
Yeah. So, and a lot of them are a lot different than her. And she was kind of freaking out about that the night before. And my husband said to her, you don't have to be friends with all of them. You just got to find your few. And she's found more than a few and is having a great time. So,
well, that's awesome.
Anyway, so we do a lot of different things. We talk about nutrition. We talk about sleep. There's one time they did this meditation where they're supposed to think of a lemon, and they're like, I walk them through this whole written script, and they're visualizing the lemon, and they actually cut the lemon in half, and they see the juices flying out of it, and they, anyway, they end up putting the lemon in their mouth and tasting the lemon, biting the lemon, and they, their mouths start they pucker, and the point of it is like, that's how powerful your mind is.
Yeah.
And so when you are telling yourself that you suck, your body gets a response from that. Like your body will believe that.
Yeah. Right.
Just different things like that.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah.
What's something you've kind of learned about yourself? I know you've talked a lot about everyone else and stuff, but what's something you kind of live by every day?
Oh boy, imperfection is right up there at the top. I mean, I celebrate the resiliency of my kids because of how imperfect their mother is, in so many ways, and my husband. We're just not perfect. And so learning about me, growing up, I always said I didn't want to be a mother because I was honestly scared of childbirth.
That's a valid point.
That does not sound like a good idea at all. That comes out of where? I don't think I'm going to do that. Yep. And I'm the fourth of 5 kids. My mom didn't use a single drug for any of us, and I was born butt first in 20 minutes. Okay, so there was. She's a hero in my world, but I just was like, I never thought I was going to have babies. And then when I met my husband, he was like, yeah, I don't want babies. And I'm like, okay. In my mind, I was like, if the urge hits me, I'll tell him we're going to have babies.
Yeah.
We're going to have babies. Yeah. But so we never really even talked much about it. Yeah. And then he'd said maybe 5 years in, we'll have one. Well, it's a good thing we got the urge earlier because it took us about 5 years to make one, to make them. Anyway, so I never grew up. It's like when he first asked me to marry him, I went to one wedding while I was engaged. And believe me, I was taking notes at that wedding. I'm like, you do what?
Yeah.
Decorate? What a decoration? Yeah. What do I do? And I was really paying attention. And so for the motherhood thing, I wasn't really paying attention. I babysat a lot, and I thought I was going to go into elementary and special ed. I liked kids, but at college, I started as a double major in elementary and special ed, went to college and wasn't around kids for a while, and then went to a grocery store and heard a kid screaming. And it made me so I literally caught myself wanting to turn around and tell that mother to shut that thing up. And then I was like, oh my gosh, I can't be a mother. I mean, I can't be an elementary special ed teacher. And so that was out the door. I was like, I'm going to go be a gym rat. Go back to what I know. So anyway, I didn't take notes on what my mother was doing. And she tried to get me to sit still and bake bread and sew dresses and be a good mother. And I wouldn't do any of it. I was too busy to do. That's the thing. I mean, she has a garden. I'm from Idaho. We were raised on deer and elk, and it's just, she made our clothes and homemade butter and ice cream and milk on the cow outside. It was all things that I just have no ability to do because I was not a part of it. I was just reaping the benefits. So anyways, I guess to answer your question, I'm just not, it's sort of surprising to me how hard I worked my whole life to be better, to improve, to read. I mean, I've read all the books, listened to all the podcasts, I've done all the things, and still how imperfect I am. And that I'm not self-deprecating or whatever. I just say it's a good thing I was trying because boy, I would really be bad if I wasn't trying. But just that I'm resilient enough. My kids are resilient enough. We're all going to have need for therapy at some point. So let's just chill out.
I love that.
Do the best we can.
That's really super awesome. Well, no one's perfect.
Nobody's perfect.
Nobody's perfect.
I mean, my sisters are close. They're really parents.
They probably think that about you too.
Yep. Well, one last question for you before we let you go. What legacy do you want to leave behind for your business, for your clients, and especially for yourself and your children?
Oh gosh, I guess in light of what I just said is forgiveness.
Yeah.
I have a personal statement that I worked long and hard to make, and it says in there, one of the lines in there is that love and forgiveness are my default emotion, language, and action. And they aren't always. I'm going to admit that I haven't knocked that into my head yet. I'm working on it, but wouldn't life be beautiful if it was everybody?
Yeah,
first
absolutely.
Default.
Yeah.
Emotion, which leads to your actions usually, and your anyway. So, or your language and your actions. So, I do try to encourage them and myself and my community to improve.
Yeah.
Like, again, I'll say it's a fine line between loving yourself, even for your imperfections, but also loving yourself enough to want to be better and to work to be better. And that all stems from, I do not like and we do not allow in our house the victim mentality. You know, there's nobody else to blame for our situation. It just is what it is. I try, again, I fail, but I try to lead with curiosity instead of judgment in all things, you know, like whenever they come to me with and Isaac, you know, at 16, a 16-year-old boy doesn't come to me anymore and tell me about his fears or anything like that. He's pretty mature and just like level about all that now. But like whenever, like with Nadia, when she was a gymnast, she would be on a balance beam, 4 inches wide, yay tall, with literally judges sitting there judging her every move, you know. And there was one gymnastics meet where she fell off the beam, I think 3 times. And I'm filming the whole thing from a distance, and I can see from all the distance away that I'm filming. I mean, you hear me filming it. You hear me go,
No.
You're like, poor baby.
and then I see her lip quivering while she's up there trying to. And by this point, she's forgotten the routine. She doesn't even know what the next move is. She's so distraught. Like, what is happening?
Yeah.
And you just want to go down there and scoop them off that beam and tell the judges just to mind their own business and just scoop her up and solve all our problems.
Yeah.
But again, this is where the growth happens. And so celebrating failure and building resiliency through forgiveness and just always getting up and trying again, I guess, is probably the biggest thing for me.
That's amazing. Well, for our viewers and everyone watching today, where can we find you?
Oh, gosh. Usually at the gym. Or gym, driving my kids around. We're watching their sports. Yeah. So I am on Instagram.
Okay.
But honestly, it's less about my business and turned in more of my baby book with the kids. And I have a LinkedIn and I have a X I have all these things and I always forget to go post things at them or whatever. But I do have the Arete Warrior website is still there, but it's still geared towards kids. I need to update it, but there is a place there and at my Instagram to sign up for the newsletter.
Okay.
And that's probably the best way to, get connected with me and hear what I have to say on that weekly level.
Do you know what that handle's called?
My mom, sorry. Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
That's a good point. Find me on Instagram. Good luck.
Yeah. Find it yourself. Just, scan her face and look on Google. Just
show mom.
Yeah.
No, it's My Trainer Jill is the Instagram. And aretewarrior.com is the website. But
good.
Yeah.
Okay. Great. All right. Well, thank you so much, Jill, for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, and we'll probably talk to you again pretty soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.